Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is not the armchair expert, but it is Lisa Kneller with Unstuck, the Road to Reinvention. And I am here to talk with Vanessa Broers. Am I saying that right, Vanessa?
That was amazing. That was great.
Thank you. Yeah, to share a reinvention story, which is what this show is all about. We are constantly reinventing ourselves, and I think I could probably interview everyone in the world. But I picked Vanessa because she's an amazing coach and she's an author, and we're going to talk about her book and all the things she's been doing and how she got to where she's at and all of that in just a moment. And so for now, I want to introduce her and I want to give her a proper introduction. So I'm going to actually read her bio, okay? Because I have not memorized this. It's a few paragraphs. I did truncate it a little bit, Vanessa.
Too long. Biography.
All right. So Vanessa works with high achievers to help them become high performers. Where high achievers rely on hard work, force, and often self-abuse, high performers have learned how to truly optimize their work through creativity, power, and magic. I love those words. She is a certified health coach and is a master certified transformational coach. Vanessa began her work as a health coach to improve her own health. And as she worked with herself and her clients, she became fascinated that their conversations rarely stayed on food and became curious as to why some clients succeeded while other clients failed. And she was fascinated by her clients' inability to reach their goals despite having the knowledge, time, motivation, and resources to do it. I'm curious about that. This catalyzed her decade-long study of human behavior and performance. She has apprenticed and studied with the highest masters of this craft and also spent 2 years working closely with one of the most powerful shamans in the world to understand how the complex emotional experiences of human beings can be understood and transcended and how they unconsciously influence our behavior. That's a mouthful, but maybe we'll break that up a little bit. She has a 10-year coaching career and is continuing to coach while she rears her daughter, Pepper. Pepper is the catalyst for so many things, one of which is the book that Vanessa has recently authored and published titled We Are One. Oh, thank you for showing that. How one woman reclaimed her identity through motherhood. Yes, please show that beautiful cover. I love that.
Thank you.
Yes. So this interview is about her story of reinvention and how she has utilized her skills to navigate motherhood while creating the business and personal life of her dreams. Vanessa is also the host of the Practical Magic Show, where she interviews some of the most magical and phenomenal coaches in the world and other amazing people. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing the show. I mean, reinvention, and especially the way that you approach it from so many different angles, I think is such a gift. It's so important, and just offering the perspective and the option to people that they have the choice to reinvent themselves and giving them a resource to do that. I just appreciate it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Yeah. And I love your show too. I think it's so fun and so cerebral. And I love that. So we can talk about more of that later when you tell everybody where they can find you, all your stuff.
Great.
But let's start with your story of reinvention. Tell us all the things, like where you grew up, high school, college, all of that kind of stuff. I think it's great to hear people's backgrounds.
Yeah, I'll give you the super short, like we already got the full biography in the bio, but my reinvention, I feel like I've attempted to create myself for the most of the beginning of my life, but I feel like reinvention for me was around motherhood. So I'll give you a little, like the truncated version of the past, and then I'll tell the reinvention story, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I grew up, I had a very loving family, 5 sisters. You can imagine the mayhem, lots of allies. It was basically Survivor, like so there was like all kinds of shifting alliances and drama. It was really similar. But my parents struggled with addiction, and so that came with difficult times as well. And so for me, I think I came into this world driven, just high energy, high achieving, and the collision of that with some of the challenges in my childhood really resulted in, for lack of a better word, a real addiction to success. And because I am, and I say this with humility, like I can get good at things really quickly, it was easy for me to avoid the undertow that being that way created. And what I mean by that is I was able to achieve and create and succeed in sports and then in school and then in professions and then as an entrepreneur, but that left me successfully hollow. From the outside, is that very traditional story. From the outside, I have a great husband and a beautiful place and I drive a car, all that stuff was there. But it was, I still felt anxious and unhappy pretty much all the time. So my reinvention really happened when I got pregnant because I did not want to be a mother. I didn't even know how much I didn't. I just thought like, oh, someday I'll want to be a mother once, blah, blah, blah. But that day was never going to come. And I realized that the moment I got pregnant. And it was this really intense moment of awareness and inner knowing that collided like a freaking atomic bomb. The awareness that I did not want to be a mother and would never want to be a mother, and the deep inner knowing that there was no doubt I was about to become a mother. And not for any moral reason. I have no, people's choices with their bodies are none of my business. But for me, it was just this knowing that this is happening. It was like, if you've ever just had this, like, I knew there was something deeper. I knew there was more to it. But it was like an identity collapse. Such an interesting thing for someone who has spent their whole life dedicated to a coaching profession that's built upon shifting your identity. I had very few life experiences that forced me to re-examine my identity. And those are very different. Like hiring a coach to change intentionally has its ups and downs, but when life just throws you a curveball and knocks you straight in the side of the head, it's a different kind of identity shift. And what it really forced me to do ultimately was challenge the idea that my identity had anything to do with my success in profession. I had become so mixed up that I was a high achieving entrepreneur coach, that motherhood just it's not real, but in my made up scenario took that away. And so in my work with my shaman, one of the first things he said was, this pregnancy is a gift. It's a gift from God meant to systematically destroy your identity. Word for word, because it's too small, it lacks spiritual depth, and your life is practically meaningless. And those were intense words for someone who dedicates their life to a meaningful profession. And so that journey over those 9 months and still 2 years in, for me, motherhood is not about the development of my daughter. It's about the evolution of myself. And so I have been, I think, consistently reinventing since the moment I found out that I was, in fact, a mom.
Well, I just have to say that your book depicts all of that really well. And I have been blown away by your book. you're not just a good writer, but you lay it all out there. And I think it's amazing. And it's kind of written like in short essays, which I love because my attention span isn't that long. So it's a perfect book for me. And it's got all the feels in it. Like everything is in there. Every like a piece of awareness, tools that you use, feelings, like all of it. So what inspired you to write it? And what do you hope people are going to get from reading it?
Thank you first for reading it and loving it. Oh gosh, this book felt like accepting an assignment. I didn't want to write it. I actually have never intended to write a book. I had no interest. Oddly enough, it was the easiest thing I've ever done. But I was laying in bed early on after Pepper was born, just feeling into this really complex and surprising moment where I was laying next to Siba, my husband, and Pepper was on the other side of me. And I just was overwhelmed by this desire to ignore, just like completely like amputate his energy from my space and be fully submerged in just me and Pepperness, like smother Pepper on my face, like if you're a mom, you might understand that. If not, it's going to sound really creepy.
No, I do. I get it. It's big love. It's like the biggest
big
love.
Yeah. Really big, overwhelming love. And because of my perception of motherhood as like the death to the identity of Vanessa as a woman and professional, that scared me a lot. And I saw this realization of how women can get so lost in motherhood, but not from the external, judgmental, fearful place that I had before, from this fully embodied, holy crap, I totally see how I could wake up 30 years from now with no connection to who I am, completely absorbed in the role of mother and in my daughter and disconnected from my husband. It just downloaded in a second. And I think, thank God, because of my profession, I immediately stepped back and thought, well, that's one option. I don't have to do that. So in order to not do that, what would I have to do? And it just occurred to me, like, I have to become bigger. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that all of a sudden life was demanding so much more love from me. And at that moment, I did not have that much to give. And so it just, and what happened in that moment, as many things that I do, I was just started writing what I was experiencing. And as soon as I finished writing that little message to myself, I thought verbatim, oh shit, this is chapter 1 of my book. So in that moment, I just decided, okay, I'm going to write all this down. I'm going to document everything I experience, and I'm going to use that to work through it and make sure that I transform. And so I kind of joke that in the book, that the book became like my Wilson from Castaway with Tom Hanks. I always had this book in my head the whole year, every time I had a hard moment, every time I felt stuck, every time I felt upset, and I also had this very sleazy producer personality come online where I'd be in a big fight with my husband and be like, oh yeah, this is going to be really good for the book.
It's awesome.
And as I wrote it, it just became more, actually, as I finished it, for me, what I hope to create with this book is no less than a global innovation of motherhood. I think that, and I know all women don't struggle with motherhood like I did, but I think motherhood does present some very unique and spiritual challenges that are not being talked about. And like I said, I don't see the point of motherhood being about the development of the child. It's about the evolution of a woman. And I think because we're not in that conversation, too many women are getting lost and stuck and confused and derailed. And I want to change that.
I've always thought that our children are our greatest teachers. You know, from the time my kids were born, I treated um, being their mother as I just learned, you know, I just kept learning and learning from them. And I still am to this day. They're both smarter than I am. And and funny and all of the things. But yeah. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what the process was like, because you know some people like Brene Brown is putting out a book in November, and she's like, this book is kicking my ass. And I'm like, was it like that for you? Because I don't know if you're familiar with the War of Art, but like
Yes.
you got that big R, that big resistance sometimes to sitting down and writing. Like, how was that? What was that process like for you?
You know, I did not experience that at all. When I say, like in my mind, I have this idea that I need to replicate my entire life to be like my book because it's so easy for me to write. And I think the reason why is my process wasn't about writing. My process was, I went like 5 steps backward to first just creating an awareness that every single moment of challenge was an opportunity for something to share, teach, and learn from. I think very similarly, honestly, to how you mothered your children.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to capture it. And I knew I wanted to capture it as raw, real, anatomical, and in the moment as possible. So there were moments, Lisa, that I was literally like crying about something that was happening and writing, like couldn't even see because I was like crying on my phone because I'm like, no, I need to get the full anatomy of this while I'm feeling it. And so there was that was part of the process, was just being so present in the moment and writing. And then the other one was understanding that my writing process in general is about opening myself up to, like, I'm not a very good writer in the sense that if you ask me to write like a report and I have to sit down and write and then go back and edit, like I'm not very good at that. My writing process is understanding when my writing channel is open and just obediently transcribing what comes through. Now, there was a lot of fun in the I'll talk about this in a second, but in the after the book was done. So I thought, of course, because I transcribed this in the moment and I write, it's going to be this beautiful depiction of an evolution of me. And when I finished and read the book, it was awful. It was so boring. It was so boring.
Doesn't sound boring to me.
I was
Did you edit it a lot? Did someone
so
edit it?
out. Yeah. So what I did is I took all the essays. It was really attached to them being in like chronological order of how things happened. And at the advice of my sister, I literally printed out the book, cut the whole thing open, and just splattered it on the floor. And was like, okay, it's not going to be in the order I thought. So what order is it going to be in? And I worked with my sister and we re-edited the whole thing until the story actually moved the reader through it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that you were open to doing that and that you did it and then it got done.
It was really about, it was, I think, for one of the first times in my life where the only guiding principle was intuition.
Okay.
If I could simplify it.
I'm waiting for the download of my book, because I've kind of like you, like I've never really been inspired to write a book. I have no, but then I never say never, right? Like, yeah. Who knows? Okay, so you mentioned the fact that you experienced some anger and rage due to traumas when you were younger. You kind of already addressed that. Is there anything else you want to say about that, about how that shaped you and what you've learned about those emotions and how they inform you?
Yeah, I think, first of all, so many people are afraid to see it. We're not very good at teaching about anger in our culture. It's kind of like the emotion that no one's really allowed to feel. And if you are, a lot of times it's because you grew up in a family that was overly expressive with anger. So healthy relationships with anger, that was something really important for me to learn. I had to understand that the point of anger is to teach us about boundaries and where our lines are being crossed and to inform us of danger or values being compromised. To me, I just thought anger meant I'm wrong. If I'm angry, I'm wrong. And so it's been a journey for me to honor anger in a healthy way. And it's a powerful energy, right? So it feels scary and it can feel consuming, but so much of the time, at least in my case, under anger is always some sort of sadness. And sadness leads me back to love. Because when we're sad, it's because something we love feels compromised. And so for me, understanding that pathway has been really important. And I've since been able to use anger as a really powerful tool with my clients. Because I'll tell you, one of the biggest liberators from not enoughness is with, let's say, like at least, well, not even trauma. I was going to say with trauma, but not even trauma, is to understand that there's some sort of liberation that occurs when we see that it was our environment that had us experience ourselves as not enough. And the reason why anger it's not the end result, but it's a beautiful step on the path, is because for the first time, when we sink back and we look back at our life and go, no effing wonder I felt like I wasn't enough or couldn't be self-expressed. If I was shut down and bullied by my sisters, or there was trauma in my family, or criticized by my mom, or abused by my dad, like there's this like pissed offness that sets you free from your perception that it was somehow your fault or somehow your flaw. And I don't ever want my clients to stay there in that blame, but that anger like opens a door to, holy crap, I've been enough my whole life. And then from that place, we can offer compassion and forgiveness.
I love that. Thank you for addressing that, because that's so important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on a little bit into the book. I love how you talk about loving P unconditionally while conditionally loving your husband's Siba.
Yep.
And this is something most of us do, as adults. We can just love on the babies and the kids, but when it comes to everybody else, we do have conditions. I would love for you to talk about that and just how that awareness changed your relationship with Siba, if it did.
Yeah. And I would add too that we don't only do this with other adults in our lives, but we do this perhaps even most with ourselves. So for a little bit of background, if someone hasn't read the book, which would be most people in the world,
it's going to get out there. Don't you worry.
Thank you. What this piece is about is realizing that I literally loved every single element of everything Pepper did, from smiles and giggles to pooping and crying and everything, waking me up in the middle of the night. I loved every minute of it. But I would contrast that with how often I was irritated by little things that Siba would do. Like I still do not understand this. We talked about it yesterday. This man screams on the phone. I'm like, that microphone is normal. Like, he could whisper and they could hear you. So screams on the phone. He as soon as we pay the check at a restaurant, he wants out. Like there's all these little things. Like I wish he liked socializing more. And I want him to be different. And if he were different, I'd be happier, is ultimately what it comes down to. So I saw this contrast, and it was really funny because the primary thing that triggered me to it was we had gotten in an argument because I finally took a nap, which I'm very bad at and takes me days and days. And then he just decided in our flat, like loft style apartment at the time, to scream on the phone to a friend from home. Just walk around screaming. And it woke me up and I got really mad. And then later that night, I was sleeping and Pepper woke me up crying And I was so excited, like, oh, she's awake, you know, and it was like, whoa, really sleep deprived. And so I just started to look at all the different ways I loved her unconditionally and I loved him conditionally. And what I saw was that it came down to innocence.
Ah,
Pepper's innocent. What
yeah.
infant, even at 2, she's still innocent, you know, pushing her friend into the pool, like it's innocence. And it's so much easier to recognize innocence in a child, which makes all behavior excusable or at least understandable. But somehow we have deleted innocence from our relationships with other adults, including ourselves. And I would argue that all behavior is rooted in innocence. And I mean all. And why I that's intentionally provocative because ultimately behavior comes from awareness. And as human beings, at some level, all of our awareness is limited. The worse the behavior, the less awareness we have. And when I am working through something deep and difficult and emotional, my patience with Pepper is almost zero, right? Because my awareness is blocked by whatever emotional turmoil I'm experiencing. And the majority of people just don't realize that that's where their behavior is coming from. Our behavior becomes so autopilot. So when I started to be able to, when I started to challenge myself to see Steve's innocence, his tantrums looked as innocent as Pepper's tantrums, right? Where before I was like, get it together, you're a grown man. No, he's not. Nobody's you're all toddlers walking around in human adult bodies, right? So my patience, you know, and even actually just sharing that piece with him, which I was a little nervous to do, he said that he was relieved because he felt guilty for having had the same experience.
Interesting. Interesting. You know, when I heard you being interviewed, oh, I think it was with John's group, the ICC group, and you started talking about the map of consciousness.
Hmm.
I went out and bought that book because I was like, oh my God, I need to learn that stuff. And so I started learning, you know, what the different levels look like.
Yes.
And so one day, my husband, who has a very short fuse, always has, he has no patience. And I said, you know, when you go off like that, your level of consciousness is like way down here. Like, just be aware of that. For some reason, it does bother me because I feel like at his age, he should be more aware of it. And not only that, he should care about how that affects me, his short fuse, you know?
Yep.
But also, I mean, I've learned that our relationships are really about what we think, right? So we can change those thoughts and think the best of best of our spouses, and I think they will rise up to that.
Yeah. And I would even argue, what does age have to do with consciousness?
Well, that's true. We like to think that as we get older, we get more mature, and that is not necessarily true.
Round. I think it's the other. We're like Benjamin Button. It's just the other way.
So true. Thank you for pointing that out.
But I really do get it. I get it. My husband and I, we learned about that scale of human consciousness somewhat together. I was like a half a step ahead of him. And so another way we started to play with this was something called the ladder of consciousness, which another mentor of mine teaches. And very simply, you can imagine a literal ladder in your body. Mm-hmm. And at the top of the ladder are high vibe emotions like love and creativity and connection. The bottom is fear, anger, worry, doubt, anxiety. The lower you are on that ladder, the less consciousness you have, the less awareness you have, the worse your thinking is, which the worse your behavior is, and the less control you really have over your actions, behaviors, and thoughts. But when you start to realize, that there is this ladder and your natural state is the top,
yes,
you can start to just see, hey, I'm low on the ladder. let me like step back a little bit and just do something to get myself back up the ladder. We don't have to change all kinds of things in our lives to get back up. So we learned this at the same time. And we, it was really funny because at that moment we were really in the state in our relationship where if I was in a good mood and then he was in a bad mood, my mood would drop, or vice versa, right? So our moods were so codependent on each other. And so when we learned this tool, we started to say, I'm in a good mood. Don't grease my ladder wrong. Don't pull me down the ladder. And then he would be like, you get back up here. You've been down there too long. And so it created this really funny language for us to relate to each other. And that tool helped us both so much. Now I'll walk in the house and say, I am at the bottom of the ladder. Do not engage with me. And absolutely do not believe one thing that comes out of my mouth. And he's like, so it's now become this tool where instead of greasing each other's ladder rungs, we like pull each other up. And it's been a really fun way to deal with, like, or let's say he's in a highly volatile mood, like maybe your husband was sometime, you can be like, I am not engaging with you until you're at least 3 rungs higher.
I need to educate my husband on the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get with this ladder program.
That's right.
I don't know if he'll read the book. Maybe he's an avid reader, but I don't know if he'll read that. Okay, let's talk about the benefit of frustration and growth. I love that because it's not something we think about too much, but you were talking about how Pepper, I think it was when she was walking or just struggling to do something new, and like you could sense this frustration, but it's natural and everybody goes through it. And I think we continue to go through it in life, and yet it's a very positive thing. So
yeah. I even see that recently. So just recently, she's learned to put on her shoes. And this kid, I don't know if this is normal because I don't know any other kids, but this kid will sit on the floor and put her shoes off and on 20 times in a row.
She's practicing.
It's so funny. And she's the same way crawling and walking. And there's this, Pepper didn't decide I'd like to crawl by the time I'm 10 months old. There was just this natural internal impulse to crawl. And the same thing I remember when she was trying to sit up, she'd do this like sporadic, almost like creepy, like body stiffening thing to try to like get herself up. I have to imagine it was just like nervous system acting. It freaked me out. But it was also super interesting that she had this natural impulse to evolve. Yes. And at every stage of evolution, she would get super frustrated. And it just occurred to me that she's not having all these ideas that I should be crawling already, or I set my goal at 8 months and now it's 10 months and I haven't been practicing enough. There was none of that dialogue happening in her mind. She would wake up, flip over, hit all fours, and start rocking back and forth and face plant within 30 seconds of opening her eyes. And she's
driven like mama.
Yes. She would get super frustrated.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I would get frustrated for her because I didn't want her to experience any frustration. So this is my psycho nature, but I would start to try to like prop her up. And like when she was rocking on all fours, this is so terrible. I've never said this out loud. I like moved her hand forward to try to like show her what to do. And she face planted. And I'm like, wait, this is not how this works. Do not like freaking try to interfere with your kids crawling, you psycho. So I noticed in that moment, like, okay, this is not my job. I'm frustrated and she's frustrated, but it just occurred to me that if we're all experiencing this, maybe it's just a part of the process, and it's okay. It's okay. All frustration means is that you're bumping up against the edge of your current capability. It doesn't mean your current potential. It doesn't mean your integrity. It doesn't mean it just means you're frustrated because you're bumping up against your current capability, and you just need to expand your capability and the frustration goes away. And if we slow down enough just to realize, the analogy I give is if your shoes were too small and your feet hurt, it wouldn't make any sense for you to start evaluating the performance of your feet or considering your design of a human being. It would just be to buy new shoes. Yeah. Just expand. And so when I started to look at frustration as just simply a byproduct of evolution, all the personalization and self-flawedness went away.
Yeah. I love that. And I just don't really think I thought of it that way before as it, as being a part of your evolution. Um, I thought of it as a positive thing. Yes, you have to have some resistance in order to grow, but I hadn't really thought about it. And as we get, even as we age, we still run across frustrations as we're building things, and we have to overcome certain obstacles and all of that. And if it's easy and you don't have that frustration, you're not going to grow probably, or get what you want.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that you brought that up actually, because our impulse, and I mean impulse, like almost compulsive impulse to evolve, doesn't end once we can walk and dress ourselves. But our life conditions don't push us forward the same way they did when we were kids. That impulse to grow shows up in terms of desire,
yes.
things that we want in our life. That is just as ingrained in us as Pepper waking up and flipping over to crawl. So there's nothing wrong with even that continuous desire to grow and evolve. It just becomes more of an inner game thing and an external goal than a physical like capability thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you want to talk about disruption or interruption, or
I love talking
how
about all
you
those things.
how you navigate that when you're trying to do something with Pepper or the dog, or have a meal, or what have you noticed about that? I think you did talk about that in the book.
Yeah, and if I think I did a little, and that's something that shows up more now because the book was written the journey of year one.
Okay.
So the writing stopped on her birthday, didn't go another page further. But obviously the evolution didn't. And disruption has become a much bigger challenge as she gets older, really, even than when she was in that first year. Because now she has more personality. She wants me around more. She demands more of my attention. When she was 3 months old, she could lay there like an adorable potato and I could do whatever I wanted. And now she's, if I look away for 5 minutes, she's ripping books off the shelf. And so every time I experience disruption, I notice, and I'm kind of thinking through this as I'm sharing it with you. So forgive me if I fumble around a little bit.
It's fine.
Usually, I think one of three things. Giving myself permission to change this at any time in the future, but right now it looks like one of three things. A need for control, being out of alignment, or being asked to expand my capacity for love and presence.
Mm.
So I'll kind of take them one by one, I guess. Need for control. I have noticed in my time with Pepper, when it's just her and I, how often I crave control. So if you've spent any time being present with a toddler, they are just I want to swing, now I'm done with the swing. I want to slide, now I'm done with the slide. I'm hot, now I want to eat. It's like just when you're kind of like catching up, they're changing gear.
Yeah.
And being in that environment with her and challenging myself to be as present as I can when I'm with her, which means not being on my phone, not checking email, not trying to multitask, which in and of itself is a huge challenge. Like I'm committing to not even having disruption because I'm committing to being present with her. It's hard because I'm a really driven person. And so committing 27 hours of my work week, which used to be 60 hours, and is now like 25 hours, is really difficult because I find myself constantly seeking some sort of control. I want to check my texts. I don't want to go swing. Like I'm resisting her presence. And so for me, I think that that's a huge thing for disruption for me, is like just noticing when I was at the playground with her today and I was wanted to check my email. I'm like, what does that have to do with any, like that has no relevance and no necessity. So I just noticed those moments of tension when I feel disruption as me clinging to some form of control. And even just that
Mm,
awareness allows me to bring myself back to presence and just let go of whatever the thing was.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's presence. I'd say alignment is the second one for me. And when I say alignment, what I mean is I have gotten pretty clear in the last couple of years on what is priority for me and what my true desires are. So by true desires, I mean the kind of connection I want to feel to my family, the kind of love I want to feel for myself, the kind of peace I want to feel in my day. I have other external desires like how I want my book to sell and the development I want my coaching business to go. And alignment matters there too. But I'm talking about alignment on a deeper level. And so when I'm misaligned with how I want to be feeling in my day and my life, disruption is a constant assault because I'm just
Mm,
being ping ponged around by my day and by my life. And it feels like, again, I'm just trying to grasp and like pull everything into some weird structure that makes me feel like I can be fluid. But when I am aligned in my life and I know what I want to create, it kind of allows me to be more fluid with how my life goes. And as a parent, and really as any human being on the planet, disruption is life.
hmm
Disruption is life. There's like how freaking boring anyway for like every day to go exactly. Even when we create enough routine to not have disruption, we get bored and enter into disruption. So I think that's just the other thing, is just like trying to be aligned with the flow of the way things are going in the first place. And then disruption isn't something that I create. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
And then the third one was the third thing I said.
You said presence, alignment,
I said control, presence, and alignment. Yeah.
control, presence, and alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the present part, the present part was like more and more, I'm trying to just be present with the thing in front of me. So if I'm working, I'm working. If I'm with Pepper, I'm with Pepper. And so if something from outside of that comes in, it would be easy to consider it a disruption, but it's more my commitment to that presence that has me just push it away and just be like, that's not for now. And so it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of a choice to just be in the moment. And so when disruption comes in, I try not to take it seriously.
So you can get to it later. It's like, because it is about priority, right?
Yeah.
So like if you had to take a call while in the presence of Pepper, you could if you had to. But if you
Yeah.
don't have to, you could put it off until later, right?
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't. I probably just wouldn't. If I absolutely had to, I might. But generally what I find is that it doesn't do me any service and it doesn't do her any service. And it usually just ends up stressful. And what that's had me challenged me to do is to get clear on my own boundaries and stick to them myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just be committed to that. Do you have any tips for navigating motherhood or any any major life event that you think could help people move through it more effortlessly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first one is that, and I'll say motherhood, but know that motherhood could be any challenging life circumstance that you're going through. Could be
Mm-hmm.
marriage, work, could be whatever. But I will say motherhood is a mirror reflecting back to you all the places you are not whole in yourself. So when I'm frustrated that Pepper is frustrated, that is not about Pepper's frustration. That's about my frustration.
Mm-hmm.
When I am freaking out on a Tuesday morning because I have Pepper till 11, but I feel stressed about needing to be at work, and all I'm experiencing is just this massive tension and resistance to whatever's happening. That's a mirror for me to look at my relationship to work in so many different capacities. And so almost nothing for me in motherhood is about Pepper that isn't really about Pepper. Like if Pepper's pushing, I'm wondering what that's about. Like, so my experience of motherhood for me is always a mirror. So no matter when I'm feeling tension or frustration or sadness or anger, I'm like, what is happening in me? And when I look at that way, and I have some understanding and clarity around it, and you might need support for this, and that's fine. It could be therapy or coaching or friendship or groups. It doesn't matter. Sometimes it's hard to do in yourself, or journaling. You start to realize that one of the things that's so hard about motherhood is how little of it is in your control.
Mm.
And so if you are at mercy of your circumstances, you are absolutely screwed in motherhood, because your circumstances are constantly changing. And that other human being that you call your child is not necessarily all that concerned and preoccupied with your experience. And
Right.
so, right, you get that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that doesn't even change as they get older. So yeah, just seeing it as a mirror, and every single one of those opportunities to look back and say, what's happening in me, gives you freedom from feeling totally bashed around by your circumstances.
I remember when my daughter turned 4, I took some parenting classes when she was really little, like a baby, and then I kind of stopped. Like I got enough out of it for the time being. And then when she turned 4, she got real physical in a different kind of way. Some of her behaviors had changed, and and I was getting frustrated.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, lucky me, there was like a 1-day workshop for 4-year-olds, like for parenting 4-year-olds. And I went to it and I was like, oh my God, okay, that makes so much sense. And so sometimes I think just really understanding the nature of where someone is at, whether it's a baby or a toddler or a person that you're working with, just understanding that there are different phases that people go through and shit people go through,
Yeah.
and can be helpful, right?
Yeah, but you can't even do that if you're so preoccupied. Like you wouldn't maybe have done that if you were so sunk into your own frustration. It wouldn't
Hmm.
have occurred to you to take that class.
Hmm.
So I think
That's
that,
yeah.
yeah. So we have to handle our own reaction to what's occurring to be able to see it clearly. Like I know for sure my blind spot as a mother is discipline, because I experience my unconsciousness around the idea of limitation. I hate to feel limited. And so I've conflated discipline and limitation. And so my husband and I have a code word, which is blind spot. And if they say blind spot, it's like we go with their dad's opinion, because it's a blind spot. I can't think clearly. And so I think it's just so important to keep handling our own reactions to things, because that has nothing to do with our kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. Anything else you want to talk about with regard to your work or your book?
I think that the one other piece of advice that I would give, and this is through my lens, but
Mhm.
I really do believe that motherhood is a spiritually designed experience to offer reinvention. It's
Mm.
like, to me, that's the whole point of motherhood. You might enter into it from any different door. It could be because I really want to be a mom, or I accidentally became a mom, or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter how you enter into motherhood. I really believe that the spiritual purpose of motherhood is the reinvention of the woman. And it's
Mm.
because of the challenge. It's because of the way your kid is spiritually designed to push every button you didn't even know you had from the minute they are born, that allows you, and that button pushing that we experience, all that is the like the non-integrated aspects of ourselves. It's all the wounding, it's all the self-consciousness, it's all the worry, it's all the stuff that's not really you in the first place. And so if you're willing to engage in motherhood from this spiritual reinvention perspective, what you get is this companion who is unconsciously committed in every way to showing you all the places that you're not you. And so when you engage in it that way and you're like, whoa, I'm freaking out about this. Let me look at that in myself and let it go and shift it. All of a sudden that thing that's not really you falls away and you just become, you have the opportunity. I think why I'm so passionate about this is because from a cultural conditioning perspective, motherhood is something we manage, balance, survive, and mitigate the impact to ourselves. And that drives me insane because the way I see motherhood is this, like, if I were to create an image of motherhood, what I would create is this like bright, shining figure who's like just got colorful feathers and leaves falling off of them. And to me, like those feathers and leaves are just all the things you accidentally picked up and became along your life that motherhood gives you the opportunity to just let fall away.
So there's magic in that. And then you get to really see your true identity over time. Yeah. Which continues. I mean, your true identity is more pure than what we would see on the surface, right? But
yeah. It's
but
not like another personality under the personality. It's like and I'm talking to you. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's like your true essence.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of, you could give it descriptions, but it's more of a feeling of, we know when we don't feel like us. I think motherhood is just a hot spiritual fire to get to the real you a whole lot faster.
I love that. It's really a different perspective. I've never heard that. And I didn't go through these things too that you went through. I didn't have the same struggles with motherhood, and I didn't think about it as much, I just went through it.
Yeah.
And I think I went through it pretty consciously because I kind of had an idea and a goal of how I wanted my kids to turn out and how I wanted our relationship to be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So there were things I had in mind. And so I was conscious. I just didn't see all the frustrations in the same way, I guess. But I think it's so cool. I think it's so cool that you are, and you're pointing it out and you're experiencing it your way. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have time for rapid fire or what?
Yeah, let's do it. Fire away.
All right. Here we go.
What are the rules?
What are the rules?
Yeah.
Well, you can think about it, but as fast as you can. This isn't like deep talk here anymore. Okay. Who has had the most influence on you in the past 10 years?
My mother.
Favorite movie or TV series?
Any Iron Man or Avengers.
Superheroes.
All superheroes.
I love it. How do you identify on the Enneagram?
7. Wing 8 or 8 wing 7.
Okay. I'm a 9 wing 1.
Way a pain in the ass.
Your favorite meal?
Tacos.
Yum. Oh, there goes my little earbud. Okay. When are you most productive?
4 a.m.
Wow. Okay. Fill in the blank. Coaching is?
Liberating.
Liberating. I love that. There's a word in Sanskrit called moksha. That's exactly what that means. I love it. Okay, pick one. Summer, fall, spring, or winter?
Fall.
Fall. Yeah, so you live in the East Coast.
No, I live in Denver. But summer is...
Oh, that's right. You're in Denver. Okay.
Too hot.
Why was I thinking East Coast? I knew you were in Denver. Yeah. Okay. What is the most delightful word you can think of?
Ooh. I like this question. Possibility. In fact, one of my declarations is I am delighted by possibility. So that's the one.
Oh, I love that. Be a possibilitarian. I made a graphic of that one. I love that. When dreaming big, what is the one negative thought that pops up? And then what do you do with that?
I can't do it. And what I do with that is, for lack of a better word, like description, is I sit through it until I don't feel connected to it, and then I'll take action.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Because everybody has those thoughts, right? Like, dream big. It's like, there's no way. Who am I? Right. Okay. And that's what Vanessa and I are in the world to do, to help people see that.
That's
okay.
Right.
I'm kind of getting this from your book a little bit, but what do you get about fashion and what don't you get?
Oh God. What do I get? Nothing. No, I'm starting to get that fashion is, speaking of, self-expression.
Yes.
What I don't get is budgeting for it. Like, I can't get there.
I mean, I shop at Costco a lot and Ross, and I really buy things that just I think look good on me. That's it. Like, I'm not really, I'm not a fashion girl.
No matter how much money I make, I never have money for fashion. Obviously, because like I want other things, but that's confusing for me.
Yeah. What is one thing you would put on your bucket list?
A hot air balloon ride randomly is like something that I've wanted to do a lot lately.
Cool. Okay. If you could be any animal, what would it be and why? And do you have a power animal? I mean, it's you've been working with a shaman. I'm curious.
Yeah. So no to the power animal. If I could be any animal, what would I be? I think I would be an eagle.
Because they soar.
Yeah, they fly. They're fierce. But also what made me laugh is a honey badger came to mind, which is probably more how I usually am.
It's okay. You can be more than one. Where's the worst place you could get stuck?
In my head.
Yes. What do you stock up on the most?
Stock up on? I am not a stalker. Maybe pens?
Toilet paper? No. Pens?
I'm like an accidental minimalist. I can't, I just don't stock. It's unintentional, but I'm not a stalker.
I think being a minimalist is cool. What is your biggest addiction?
Work.
Okay.
I'm transcendent,
You're not alone.
but that's it.
You're not alone. You're driven. I get it. And it's a good thing. What is the one thing you are most afraid of?
Failing.
Okay. What's on your nightstand right now? That usually refers to books, not baby bottles.
A Palo Santo candle. A journal. I have a 10-year journal, which is a very cool thing if you don't know about. Mm-hmm. So it's a journal that has like every day for 10 years on one page, and you just write a couple sentences. So every day I write a sentence of memory or an aspect of Pepper. So in 20 years, I'll give her 2 of these journals. And a stack of books that I can't articulate because I haven't read. And one called A Happy Pocket Full of Money that I am rereading over and over for a year.
Okay. I love it.
And a lot of dust.
What did I ask you about the biggest addiction? Did I ask you that?
Yeah, it was work.
Oh, that's right. Work. Okay. Favorite morning or favorite beverage or favorite cocktail?
Favorite beverage, iced tea. Favorite cocktail, beer.
Okay. And then what's next for you?
Like in life?
Yeah. What's next? You've written a book. You're a mom. You're a businesswoman. There doesn't have to be a next either. I'm just wondering if there is one.
There's a next. I have as much resistance to saying this as I did to becoming a mom. But what's next for me is going all in on innovating motherhood.
Cool. I can't wait to see that. Vanessa, this is the longest I've gone. I don't know how long your show is. Is yours an hour?
No, it's usually like 35, 40 minutes.
So is mine.
Yeah.
So I think this has been so much fun, and I have never done the rapid fire before, but I wanted to try it, and I think it's so fun.
It was super fun.
And yeah. So last thing, tell everybody where they can find you.
So you can find vanessabrewerscoaching.com. My book, We Are One, is on Amazon. My show, The Practical Magic Show, is on Facebook and YouTube. Mm-hmm. And you are more than welcome to just reach out directly to Vanessa at vanessabrewerscoaching.com if you want to share anything, ask anything, get any support at all. I would love to hear from you.
Okay, I'm going to type that out in the comment section on Facebook, and then you will be sharing this video around. Thank you, everyone who tuned in or is watching the replay of this. And Vanessa, thank you so much. And for a whole hour, thank you. Thank you. This is really fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. All right. We're going to, go out and buy that book for a friend for Christmas. Okay. You've got some time and you want to make sure it's available. I'm going to end the video now, and y'all have a wonderful rest of your week.